Hello and welcome to the Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena.
And this is where we talk about the good, the bad, and all the shift in between.
We just talk mad shift.
Let's get into it.
Well, hello. And today we have a special guest, Rosie Cataldo. We've had her on previously in talking about working with emergency workers or social workers or people in the helping fields and helping people work through trauma. And so we wanted to have her back on today to do another discussion about leaning into the shift. And Rosie and I met quite a while ago at a survivor leadership retreat. And that was where we were working with women who had been in situations with sex trafficking and being severely traumatized in some way. Survivors who had now moved into a position of leadership and leading other women into their own healing. And so we were fortunate enough to meet at that retreat together where we were facilitating at that event. And I was really amazed at Rosie's story and really wanted to bring her on and talk more about her transformation. Rosie, tell us a little bit more about what you do, because I find that fascinating and hard to explain, but worth talking about.
Thank you for having me, Lena. Again, it's always such a privilege to spend time with you. And to be really succinct, I work to prevent and to heal trauma. So that involves doing some prevention education for youth. It involves some interdiction training, specifically on human trafficking, focusing on sex trafficking. And it also includes working with individuals and groups, like you mentioned, advocates and survivor leaders in the healing space. So one-on-one healing, specific to trauma healing, and then helping others to learn what I practice, because the results I've seen and witnessed are really remarkable. And so I thought it was what I practice and the modalities I've learned are just too good to keep to myself. So anyone who's interested in learning, I'm always happy to share.
Awesome. Thank you. And I wanted, what was really fascinating to me in meeting you was really kind of learning more about what brought you into this field. Like, what were you doing before? What kind of catalyzed your transformation into healing work?
Well, prior to being in the counter human trafficking space, I'm a mom. So my husband and I have 3 kids, young adult kids and a teenager. And I had worked with the Federal Reserve Bank, our nation's central bank, in public affairs. And they were kind enough to let me work part-time from home for 10 years so I could be a lot more available with my kids. And something ignited a shift. There was a series of events that happened in my community. I learned that my friends, toddlers, were pulled into a very sophisticated sex trafficking scheme by their in-home nanny. And I learned this 6 years ago, and it just shook me to my core. I knew a bit about human trafficking. We had a Super Bowl in our area. I live in the Midwest, and there was a lot of awareness going on around sex trafficking and how to report it. However, I had no idea the market for young children. So that really shook me. And even though this is not my personal story, it is very personal to me, because I know details that you don't have to know, but I know details that have really changed the way I look at the world and really have altered how I operate in the world. And I went on really a quest for solutions. I had a conversation with, I call God, your, higher power, your creator, and just asked what I could do in this space, because I'm a mom, I'm a civilian. I have certain skills in other areas, but I'm not an investigator. I'm not a lawyer. I thought, what could I do? And really, I was shown and introduced to so many people through different avenues that I recognized how every one of us has the ability to do something, whether it's teaching, coaching, just being a more active and engaged parent, really simple things that you can do to help protect kids in this world, this digitized world that we live in, that we as adults did not have to navigate.
Yeah, that must have been really hard to hear something like that going on just doors away from you. But that ended up being a big push into this field that it doesn't sound like you were looking for, but it kind of woke this up in you.
Yes, you're spot on, Lena. Yes, it really, I say I didn't choose this space, it chose me. But what although I never wanted to know some of the things that I know, I am I am really privileged to be in the space I am in because, especially on the healing side, I get a front row seat to some miraculous transformations in people. And I never would have arrived to where I am without learning some of these things. So, some things that can really crack you open and, shatter you for a bit, really, they are some forces that can push you to uncomfortable places, but push you to look for solutions and help. So that's what it did for me. So I like to encourage people to not be afraid of some dark spaces, because you all have gifts that can be helpful in different ways.
Yeah, and that speaks to that leaning into that shift is when something is very, I don't know, painful, is that it may be leading you to the biggest transformation that you could have ever had. And had that not happened, then you may not have sought, these different tools in order to move into your own healing and then help other people find that healing for themselves. So tell me more about what you're doing now, like what your role is. What did this change for you? How did this move you into a different space?
Well, to start, I began by doing some abuse prevention in schools, because I thought, well, if we can prevent sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, we could prevent some vulnerabilities that these bad actors or exploiters rely on to trick youth into trusting them. So I was doing that for a handful of years, and I was having so much resistance with schools. And granted, we were going through many other really colossal changes in our society, including the pandemic. So I felt, all right, I'm going to go where I can make a difference. And I was invited to help out, to work alongside a nonprofit called The Noble. They work in the financial sector with banks and financial institutions and law enforcement. And the focus is igniting awareness and prevention tools for recognizing things like exploitative purchase patterns, and not just these larger money laundering situations, but how the everyday person, if they're already a bank examiner or in fraud, how tools that they can implement to help deter these crimes, because they're all monetarily motivated. And although that was really a huge learning experience for me, and I loved being with the group, I still had this pull. I had been, before I joined with them, while I was doing abuse prevention, I was taught a trauma release modality, and I was practicing it on a variety of people. And I began practicing it on people I know. And I started seeing some huge shifts, from alleviating depression and anxiety to finding joy after sexual assault, to someone who hadn't slept through the night in 10 years. He had complex PTSD, to start sleeping through the night. And I was just, I didn't have the words to describe what was happening. I thought, this is incredible. And so then I thought, well, these people do know me. I was second guessing what was going on in front of me, what I was witnessing. And so I was I began to practice on people I didn't know. And I still was seeing some beautiful shifts in limiting beliefs, in connecting. I happen to have a friend who's a genocide survivor, and I do believe that when your awareness increases in a certain area, then other similar situations can come into your field. And that's exactly what happened to me. I was met by another genocide survivor, and she didn't sleep through the night. And so she asked if I would work with her. And again, another beautiful transformation. And I thought, this is just amazing to witness. And I began doing some trainings with survivor advocates, and that's how we met. So I feel that I just kept feeling this pull towards the healing space. I've always been fascinated with healing, from events that happened when I was young to people close to me, and some searching for healing, witnessing that. And even one of our daughter had a really awful bike accident, and really had a broken back and some horrible injuries, and seeing her healing and igniting some trauma specialists to work alongside her and some physical therapists that did some amazing work with her. It was another eye opener that, wow, we are really resilient creatures, and we are wired for healing. So the seed was planted long ago. It's always been a fascination. And when some things that you're curious about just come into your field, and opportunities really are right in front of you without a lot of digging, it's like, all right, I need to look at this. And so I feel incredibly blessed to be in this space. It's a wonderful balance for me as an empathetic person and a mom to know the details of the crimes that I know of within organized violence. It's inhumane. And as I mentioned before, I look at the world in a different way, and I don't want to be hyper vigilant all the time. I don't want to be paranoid about who I allow into my space. I do truly believe the majority of people are good people who want what is best for others. There are just some, bad apples out there that we can help youth and train youth to watch out for the tricky people. And we can, back to what I was saying regarding healing, it's a beautiful balance for me in knowing what I know and balancing out the beauty and transformation within healing. And really, it's working with people to get past their limiting beliefs, the lies that they have been told. And a really important message for people is that there is nothing wrong with you, especially people who have been through complex trauma, and knowing that you are having a perfectly natural reaction to what has happened to you. And so just in sharing that with clients, that can be right there a game changer for them. And then working through ways to peel back the layers. And when I'm working with people, they don't even have to talk about the experiences they've had. We can work on them in other ways, which is really, really important, because sometimes they're wonderful and beautiful uses for talk therapy, but in situations with severe trauma, we don't want the trauma to re-imprint. And so the ways I work with people, I don't need to know every detail about what has happened and all the bad stuff, which talk therapy focuses on. We can focus on the person at the core and get to some of the root causes of these feelings and shift them. So it's really awesome.
Yeah. So it sounds like what you're saying is like, first, this event that happened close to you sparked this need to kind of move into the prevention space.
Yes.
And really kind of working with trying to prevent things like this from happening again to people, just raising awareness. But then from that, you started working with the people who had been affected already, and then moving into like, well, how do you help them? Right? Not just, well, if you weren't able to prevent it, what do you do after? What do you do with people who have been harmed and who are in a traumatic state or suffering from PTSD or complex PTSD? And so that moved you into the healing space. So
Yes.
from preventative, now you're encompassing this healing aspect. And tell me about like what that entails, because I've experienced it with you and it's very powerful and very effective. And you're right, it's not something that you can totally understand. I definitely think it works with the energetic body and the nervous system. And can you tell me a little bit more about how you learned about that? How did you move into that space and it became something that you're like, wow, this is working and I want to keep, continuing to offer this? How did that happen for you?
Well, I was taught some simple modalities are very effective. And that involves some identifying what is weighing you down the most and giving that a number. So let's say it's fear. So just in the hospital setting, if you rate your pain on a scale of 1 to 10. So I ask people to identify what's weighing them down the most, and then we give that a rating, and we work together to bring that down to a manageable level in a session, and we can have more than one session. And it involves I invite people to say if they want a prayer or mantra. I don't inflict my spiritual or religious practices on anyone. I let the person I'm working alongside take the reins. I think that's really important. I just want to hold space for the person. And then we do a bit of breath work, which you're an expert on, and we do some visualization, we do grounding, and we do some tapping, so emotional freedom technique tapping. And a really important spot where tapping can be very helpful is on the left side of the body, a couple inches below the clavicle, right near the heart. And tapping there and identifying, helping the person name what is weighing them down, taking ownership of that, and then acknowledging that they're ready to shift this, and whether they want to shift it to the universe, to God, to the creator, to source, they name it. And so we work through that with tapping and some breathing and some visualization and nervous system regulation. You can take a person, let's say your kiddo is really nervous about, giving a speech in school. And you can, this is a nervous system regulation technique that a trauma specialist taught me, and I infuse it into the modality that I use. So you can, let's say your kiddo is laying down and you can slide your hand under their kidney, and so the lower back, and then slide your hand under their ankle, and you just wait. And if they're in a more calm state, it's going to take a minute or two to feel pulsations. If they're keyed up, you're going to feel the pulsations a lot quicker. But you just listen for those pulsations, you feel them with your hands, and once they dissipate, you can move to the other side of the body. So you're taking your nervous system and helping dial down the nervous system of the individual you're working alongside. And when you also incorporate intention, prayer, mantra, I visualize certain things I'm working on with them in their body, and it's very powerful. So that's something I love teaching people tools that they can pull and take away from the work that I do and just incorporate them in different areas. So that's one of them. And then last year, I added Reiki to healing sessions. I lost my mom suddenly a year and a half ago, and I was fortunate enough to have an amazing mom. And I was a bit in shock since she passed away. And a friend suggested a Reiki therapist who I went to, and it was so transformative for me. I describe it like grief is this cat sitting on your chest. And after Reiki, it's like the Reiki therapist helped to just take that cat and just shift it to another space. And it allowed me to have better focus And I felt like I wasn't floating through the world, like I was present and in my body. And so because of that, really, because of grief, I learned an amazing tool that was so effective for me that I wanted to add it to the practice that I've been using. And Reiki is a beautiful tool. It's utilizing pure healing energy. And it is another beautiful complement to the work I'm already doing. And I would encourage anybody to try it, to practice it. It's all about your, if you're open and you're willing and ready to shift, and you align with a really good Reiki therapist. I would ask for recommendations from friends in your area. There's some remarkable transformations that can occur. So that's another element I use, and I love it.
Yeah, I love, again, how like a painful experience moved you into another level of healing. It made you seek out another level of healing that sounds like it was already meant to be there. It just, there was going to need to be a catalyst for you to seek it, and then to incorporate the modalities into one type of, healing session for people. Because I know, for me, Reiki, same thing. I sought Reiki out probably 20 years ago in private. At that time I was like, I can't tell anybody what I'm doing. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew that I needed relief from depression and racing thoughts and just a heaviness. And that was also something that was, I didn't know why it helped. I just knew it did. And then, you cut to, many years later, then I went to learn more about it and be able to offer it as well. And so there is just this, it's something that I think people need to experience to really kind of hone in on how it helps. But I love hearing how you've incorporated that modality into like a somatic, therapeutic environment with really, putting the hand on the kidney, which is a very somatic experience in itself, because the kidney regulates our nervous system as well. And just being able to bring grounding to that from yourself into the other person.
Yes.
And it being really important to ground yourself first.
Yes.
We're moving into, doing that with your child or with another person, because if you're dysregulated, you need to, you're not going to bring regulation when you're both dysregulated. So that does bring me to my next question, which something that we had talked about in our previous podcast was, how do you regulate your own nervous system with work when you're working with others? Because many of us who are in the healing field are working with dysregulated people. We then need to come in a regulated state. But you, especially if you're working with people with high incidence or high acuity of trauma, like trafficking and abuse and things like that, how do you regulate your own nervous system and stay in a space that's healthy for you without taking on whatever's going on with the person that you're trying to help?
No, that's a great question. And I love talking about different tools. Personally, I have a grounding practice. It's akin to a meditation, but it's about 20 minutes. And I learned it in a course that I took that to help so that I don't take on other people's stuff. Because when I was first practicing these modalities, I would feel a bit of someone's stuff, like their depression or their anxiety. And I thought, oh gosh, this is not sustainable if I can't be present with my family and do this work. So I was so grateful to learn grounding practices. And grounding can be different for everybody, but mine's a bit like a meditation. It's, you can incorporate prayer, but I use a specific grounding that involves visualization and drawing up earth energy and opening up my crown and kind of mixing the two. And I also really am an active person. I've always been active and just have a love for different types of sports. So I love biking. I love cross training. I love yoga. I love kickboxing. So lots of different things. I do have a boxing bag in my basement, which is super helpful because sometimes the cases that come in are just so disgusting, then I can like visualize the person and take it out there. And then that helps me be more present and not show my emotion, have more of a poker face when I'm talking with someone who's sharing all of this. So I'd say those are the biggest ones, but really also connecting, being present with my kids. I just so grateful to be a mom, and that's one of the most important jobs on the planet. And being present with my kids, having fun with them. We love to do hiking and being outside, and we have a pet. We have a dog. Animals are just incredible because they are a source of unconditional love. And I will add that our dog really was very, very tuned in when I learned Reiki. She had always been like really close with me, but now she wants to be in every single room when I go in the room. And I thought, wow, this is Reiki energy affects animals too, because they're highly intuitive. So I'd say those are the biggest ways. And I always ask the same question, Lena, to people in your previous space and in nursing, because I know as a flight nurse, that's an incredible amount of stress and vicarious trauma. And so people like you and other trauma specialists, psychotherapists, especially people who work within to help people in organized violence, I ask them ways that they regulate themselves. So within the trauma specialist place, many of them say their connection to their higher power. So using prayer, or one psychotherapist just has a ritual of walking her dogs along the river. That's a very therapeutic tool for her. Another said running. And in talking to a retired Homeland Security investigator whose focus was exploitation, he just said camaraderie and connecting with his colleagues on different cases. And so those are all beautiful ways. I know other in the survivor retreat where we met, there was a focus on journaling and also interpreting dreams. So there are many, many, many tools. I have lists of them, and it's really exposing yourself to different ways to help regulate yourself and dial down your nervous system in the moment and then ongoing. So tools that you can infuse weekly, daily, weekly, monthly. I know since it was a bit of a stressful year losing my mom and all of the things that came along with wrapping up her estate and moving everything out of her house, I noticed driving, I had this pain turning my head. I would get this zinger up my neck. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm holding all this stress in my neck. So acupuncture is another phenomenal tool to help relieve stress. And acupuncture was another way a survivor really released some deep-seated trauma with acupuncture. She had quite an emotional release after a session. So just stay curious about different ways. I'm always learning new modalities, and I'm always happy to talk to people about ways to keep themselves regulated so they can be present with themselves and have longevity in their career, but also just be content and not be a sponge for taking on all of the bad stuff. Because even though that can be a focus of our work, we don't want it to be the focus of our life and forget all of the beauty and the good in the world, because there's really just way more of that than not. Yeah. And so we just want to help our focus.
Yeah, and there's so many ways, and I think that there's not just one path to being able to find that peaceful state. So I love how you offered so many different options. Whether in what is grounding for each person can be a little bit different, but sometimes it's going outside and putting your feet in the dirt, being with nature. Nature itself is such a regulator to our nervous system. There's a reason why you feel better when you're at the beach, or there's a reason why you feel better when you go for a hike and you're just in the woods. There's just something about being in nature because it's where we come from. And then just really tuning into your breath, like you say, doing some breath work. I mean, that's one thing that I'm a huge advocate for, is just tuning into your own nervous system and really meditation, right? Just sitting in meditation and being able to feel yourself, to just stop with all the rumination or with the noise of everything that's going on, and just really being able to tune in to what you're feeling in your body and allowing that to be there and finding ways to come back to center. Because like you, like me, like many people who are in the healing space, we're very empathetic, very empathic. And sometimes, in a naive way, we think that we can take on someone else's pain, and in some way that honors us, in some way that actually satisfies our own ego for taking on someone else's pain, but it's not what we're here to do.
No.
And I love how I remember in our last conversation, you talked about the life raft versus the,
Yes, yes, you can be the lifeline, but not the life raft.
yeah,
So just you can do so much just by holding space and listening, and it, just that alone can be tremendously helpful for people who really don't have others to
yeah,
share with. So in learning how to serve in the trauma healing space, I've also been able to heal parts of myself and strengthen my own constitution and psyche so that I can better serve and not, just like we were talking about, not take on other people's stuff, and afford myself longevity in this space. So sharing healing has immeasurable benefits.
yeah. I can see how if you had just stopped at moving into prevention, which right is extremely powerful and useful and needed, but where would that, it would have been in like a, it wouldn't have been fully filled in. It's like eventually you were going to need to move into the healing space, not just a preventative space, because you were going to need it for yourself.
Yes.
So how, some really painful situations with losing your mom and your dad, and having that move you into a place of seeking your own healing, and thereby everyone else who comes into contact with you being able to benefit from that because of the modalities you were pushed to learn,
Yes.
you know?
I feel the shifts have happened in different ways. 18 years ago I lost my dad, and I would say I feel so much closer to my dad now in the non-physical, compared to when he was here, physically, because of the beautiful signs and so many ways that he shows that he's around, not only to me, but to our kids. It's such an incredible gift. And so I'd say the shift, that was a huge shift for me there, and a shift in awareness, and being more private about it
Mhm.
and worried about what other people might say. And now I love talking about those aspects, those elements, the beauty in that. And I would just encourage people, if someone you've loved deeply has transitioned, be open to signs from them, because we are never separate. So when that was a huge shift. And then 6 years ago, when I found out what happened in my community, with the human trafficking scheme, that was another shift. Like this, I felt like God was saying, all right, now I'm going to show you this over here. I'm going to show you this, but don't worry. I'm going to equip you with the people to walk alongside you and teach you. And then, the third one was, when my mom transitioned, and then the beauty in more healing that I found. So it's really just a testament to everyone listening to, yes, life is challenging. No one said it was easy. And to not be afraid to do all that you can do to relinquish fear of the unknown, fear of uncertainty, and fear of the uncomfortable situations
Mhm.
and the challenging situations, because sometimes in those most challenging situations, those are what truly changes us, what fuels our alchemy into our tapping into our greatest gifts that we can use to transform ourselves. And if we choose, how we can help others in the world today too. So I see so much dishing out of fear in a variety of ways. So dial it back and really listen to yourself and listen to what you feel called and pulled to do if you are in a situation where you're searching, you're on that quest. And regarding healing, the beauty you see in someone's brighter eyes and their newfound joy and their connection to their true authentic selves is so profound to witness. And you get to witness that, Lena, with the beautiful work that you do. And I get to witness that as well. And I honestly don't have the appropriate language for it, but surreal and beautiful are top of mind. And it's such a privilege to have a front row seat to these miraculous shifts. So I'm just immensely grateful to be a witness. That's what I am. I'm a witness.
Yeah. That's all we need. We need to be in the presence of an empathic witness, empathetic witness. And that's where the biggest healing transformations can happen. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think encouraging people that, on the other side of the fear, on the other side of the pain is your greatest transformation. And maybe in those moments asking how what feels like the worst thing that could happen to you could actually be the best thing that could ever happen to you. Is to not numb it, not to run from it, but to lean into it and to seek out help or be open to the help that's around you, seen and unseen, and find the place where you can find your healing. Because ultimately it's not just you who will heal.
That's so true.
Thank you so much.
So true. Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful to have met you. Who would have guessed how our paths would have crossed? So it's such a privilege.
Well, if you can tell us more about how people can find you online or in socials, just letting them know where they can find more information about you or if they have questions.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I have. Basically, my website is like a business card because I'm such a niche within a niche. But it's Consult Rosie, and it's spelled ROSIE. And yes, that's my real name, .com. So consultrosie.com. And I'm also on Instagram and I'm on LinkedIn as Rosie Cataldo. And my last name is spelled CAT, like the word cat, ALDO.
Awesome. Thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, Lena.
Until the next breathwork event or healing modality training that we're going to do together.
Yes, it always brings me joy to
more to come.
All right, that's been another episode of Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena. Let us know what your questions are, and we'd love to use them on a future episode. Or check us out on Insta at Let That Shift Go, or visit our website, serenitycovetemecula.com.